our measurement
I'm
is,
sorry.
yeah, no worries. Um, our, our, our bar or our measurement is different. It's relative. It's subjective to each
Hmm.
individual. So my bar is high in that department,
Of
and
course.
I'm quite sure everyone has one in others, right?
Right.
Um, for me, I think I'm going to tell you what. Going into office, I had to take an entire year to think about whether or not I was prepared, whether or
Right.
not, and if I wasn't prepared, like, do your research, get into it,
Right.
understand what you're getting into so that you can be effective.
Right.
But beyond being effective, it's a 50-50 relationship.
It is.
It's very constituent, strength based, and you must be someone who is ready to do the work.
Right.
Then comes the authenticity, or
Mhm.
how genuine or how
Right.
sincere
Right.
your intentions are. And your intentions are only as good as, right, putting your money where your mouth is.
Right.
So for me, honestly, I'd rather stand with truth, even if that means only 2 years. And that's what
Absolutely.
and that's sort of the attitude that I'm going into it with.
Hmm.
When I stand in front of people, when I'm knocking on doors, or when I'm talking to people,
Right.
I'm telling my white audience, I'm telling my black audience, I'm telling people of any sexual identity background, or religious background, of any background,
Right.
the same story, the same narrative. It shouldn't change
Right.
depending on audience or depending on what you can leverage for your
Absolutely.
advancement. Going in, it's going to be that going in and getting pushback will be difficult.
Right.
You will be invested, or I would be invested in a system that holds my paycheck, right? The taxpayer pays it, the government holds it. So how do I push back in a system that I become invested in because it's my livelihood?
Right.
I have to build allyship with the community, and I have to be a good people manager, a
Right.
good resource manager,
Right.
someone who is able to connect, but also build this network of not only community allyship, but also programs and services and clergies and community leaders that are already doing the work,
Right.
not dismissing that and looking at it like, oh, I'm the leader of this and here I go, right? It's
Right.
not, it has to be, we have to function like organisms that we are.
Right.
We have to do it together.
Right. Right. You're very passionate. And usually, when you have a passion, it's driven from either an experience, your past, something that you may have seen someone else go through in your life. And so you have a passion for that. You're very passionate about mental health. And I just want to know, is that a part of your campaign?
Absolutely. So, we can't talk about violence prevention without talking about trauma.
Right.
We can't talk about COVID recovery without talking about depression and anxiety.
Right.
We can't talk about education, economic integration, right?
Right.
Spiritual rehabilitation without talking about mental health,
Right.
right? So
Right.
it's interwoven in everything. And I
Absolutely.
think the component that I think that we need to begin to talk about is how do we empower families or parents or families or communal supports in ways that they can support the framework or the treatment that your family member is going through in
Right.
a holistic way,
Absolutely.
right?
Right.
Treatment is a holistic experience. So
Okay.
we have to look into, gyms, food resources, food access, healthy food access. We have to look into communal resource or supports, right? So, like, is there a park that you go to where you take a walk with your dog? We have to look at your family, that parent. Do you know what a diagnosis is? Do you understand the treatment? What is the framework used with your child?
Right.
And do you have the tools so that you can monitor your child's behavior, create incentives, or de-escalate crisis? Like, how do we do these things without incorporating and including everyone?
Right.
So yes, mental health is extremely important. You look at Mass and Cass. My God, I've worked with addiction and service preventions,
Yeah.
and you look at that situation, and we have examples, don't we?
Right.
We have best
We do.
practices that we know can be implemented. However political that becomes, we have to begin to have the conversations about using examples like Portugal,
Right.
reducing reducing, completely curbing their addiction issues, right?
Right. Absolutely.
Almost to, I think, 60% within 1 year
Right.
by, right? By
Right.
spreading out by spreading out the clinics and resources and coupling that with wraparound services and communal supports, they've
Right.
been able to curve it at a rate that it's astounding. I think we can do it here too.
Hmm.
Going back to mental health, most people that suffer from addiction, homelessness, addiction goes hand in hand with a
Absolutely.
diagnosis, addiction and
Absolutely.
mental health. We can't, if you, for example, if you go outside and you see a whole bunch of people with gunshot wounds bleeding, you would
Right.
say that's a medical necessity. Immediately, you'd say that's a physical thing. I get
Absolutely.
it. That's a medical thing. Let's put them in a hospital room. How come we don't treat mental health the same or
Absolutely.
addiction the same,
I agree with you.
right?
I agree with you. I see a lot of incarcerated women because I'm formerly incarcerated who suffer from mental illness. And I think that, they put them in the wrong place. I think it makes it, they exacerbate it even more when they put a woman who usually is self-medicating with drugs because she has mental health issues and she's not taking her medicine. I think it makes it 10 times worse when they come into the system. They no longer have drugs and they're not used to taking their medication, so now you have a whole lot of problems. And I think if you treat one thing, it'll treat the recidivism rate as far as women and men going back to prison in jails. So mental health is a big component for anybody that's going to take that seat, because we have the epidemic and then we have a pandemic, and we have both of those things coupled together. And I was on Mother's Day down on Mass and Cast with Domingos De Rosa, Leon Rivera, and Father Jacob Urena, and they were helping me with the Mother's Day event. And of course, I became very emotional watching people just live like that. And it's not even living, it's existing. We were bringing extra food that we had left over and feeding the people. There was a church, some people from a church out there. So we prayed with them, but it was very hard for me to keep it together while I was out there. And then when I got back to my car, I was crying, and my daughter was like, "Oh my God, mommy, what did you see?" And the things that you see out there makes you emotional. And I think that us as women, we're very emotional creatures anyways. So having a woman sit in the seat could be beneficial for a lot of people because we run off of emotion. So it turns into passion and it drives us. And sometimes we're a force to be reckoned with. You know, I believe that a big part of the Black and Brown community, though, Tanya, and I have to be honest because I have been out collecting signatures with some of the guys and would love to help anybody. So if you ever need help with your campaign, I would be more than willing to knock on
Thank
doors.
you.
I kind of want to see why it is that the Black and Brown community has a hard time with voting. And so I ran across some people, mainly men, in the Black and Brown community who told me that they didn't vote because they're convicted felons. I am a convicted felon and I voted. And so I found that to be a tough pill to swallow because we're forced to be reckoned with. And we don't recognize our own power because we've been beaten down so many times throughout decades and centuries that we don't really know how to come from under that. So we need somebody strong in these seats to kind of say, okay, I got you. And then we can be handheld and then we know how to walk alone and have your back if you're sitting in that seat. So have you been met with this too, going out and asking when you were collecting signatures that people were, and I'm not going to lie, I would see people collecting signatures at the grocery stores and I'd be like, nope, I was one of those people. I don't have time. And again, you don't want to share your story. It's not that you don't have time. It's because the sheriff that released you or the person that released the Commonwealth released you, they said as a convicted felon, you cannot vote. And they want you to think that so that you can't vote them out of office.
Right.
So we have these men and women who are in the community, either as a Black person, as a convicted felon, or poverty stricken, who believe that their votes will never count. Can you speak to me about that? Can you speak to that issue alone?
Absolutely. So, part of not door knocking is building relationships.
Absolutely.
And it absolutely hurts to the core when someone comes to the door, woman, middle age, who's been living in her same apartment for 20 plus years
Of
and
course.
tells you, no one has ever come to this door, ever. And so when you hear that, I'm not sure that, I mean, of course I believe her.
Right.
And I don't know what, how that took place. I mean, I have some ideas. So there's one piece of that, right? A
Right.
part of it is that accessibility, like these
Absolutely.
buildings where, you're ringing the bell, and how do you get in to
Right.
access people? Like I was in Orchard Park, and that was a challenge too.
Of course.
South End is a challenge. So that's one component. The other thing is that, civic engagement has to be accessible for folks in a way that it's just regular conversation.
Absolutely.
We have to begin to be comfortable with perpetual dialogue without having, and it's going to be emotional.
Right.
And when we don't hear something that looks, even closely appealing or beneficial to our self-preservation, we're like, I don't want to hear it. Like,
Right.
we're done, right?
Right.
And I think that it takes a level of patience to be able to go through those conversations, allow people to speak. People want to be heard. People want to be respected.
Right.
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 And so why vote? We know why vote, right? But why not vote?
Right.
And I think that that's it. When you're feeling that you're not heard, when you are feeling that no matter what you've done, no matter how many efforts you've taken, even if you haven't taken efforts, but if you
Right.
feel that way, it's valid. Something happened along the way that
Mhm.
you felt that you weren't appreciated or that you weren't being heard.
Right.
These types of sentiments come from a deep history of lack of trust in relationship with government.
Right.
And so we have to be able to have those conversations, but it's not just a conversation, it's purposeful campaigning and equipping constituents, people out in the community with the tools to be able to have the platforms to understand accountability to its core. So not just saying, hey, hold me accountable. I am transparent. I have an open door policy.
Right.
All of that is very beautiful.
Right.
And I applaud my sisters who have come before me to hold office.
Right.
It's a very difficult, challenging thing to do. And I think we do have to hold each other and cover each other to move forward. So I think that the efforts have been great, but I think we could do better. I think
Absolutely.
accountability and building relationship means that I have a responsibility to give you the tools.
Right.
So why not, like BPDA, when you, or even D&D lots, when you write an RFP, request for proposal, you are asking to lease that land.
Right.
Right. And they can do it up to 99 years, by the way, right? We know this. And so you can go on the website and actually check. They have like a sort of like a Gantt type of timeline chart where you're looking at where they are in the process.
Right.
Are they in the budgeting process? Are they excavating? Are they building at the moment? Why not do that for elected officials? Why not do that? Why not develop job descriptions in a very simple, comprehensive way where people can say, oh, I know what a city councilor does.
Right.
It's right there. It's right there. I got it. You can look it up, Google it. What does a city council do in Boston? There's no one concise, like cohesive one job description anywhere.
And I've looked. It's not.
And so if you have the description and you know what you're holding me accountable for, and I respect you enough and I give you the platform, and you can monitor measurable goals.
Right.
And I say to you, when I'm failing or when I'm having a difficult time, this is how you can, this is how I can empower you, and this is how you can get involved.
Right.
And this is how we can partner in order for us to get this done.
Absolutely.
Right? That's a relationship. That's respect, because now it's reciprocal and we're doing the give and take.
Absolutely. Absolutely. I thought a lot about the people running for these seats. And, again, it always brings me back to the one thing that makes me more invested in finding out how it works in City Hall, and more importantly, making other people aware of the importance of voting for everybody. But, you see a lot of things in the community now. Now, you grew up in Academy Homes, right? So that building a bridge between the community and the Boston police is going to be more than a challenge. It's going to be beyond a challenge. We don't trust the police. We see cases like Sean Ellis, and Sean Ellis is a good friend of mine, and I always bring him there because I've never seen someone so patient and have, this is the city that has taken 28 years of your life for something that you did not do. And how do we hold the Boston police accountable? But then also, how do we help the community to know the importance of the Boston police's role and the importance of their role, and kind of bringing them together so that it's healthy? Because right now we have a very unhealthy relationship with the BPD. I don't think there's anybody. My uncle is a former Boston police officer, and he has been since I was 12. So again, you look at people like him who actually went up against the force every time he got a chance, right? As opposed to some people who just stand down and they see things wrong within the department and do nothing about it. So it makes us less apt to want to go to them and tell them that there's a problem. They're talking about defunding the police, and there's a lot of people who don't know what that really means. They think it's taking the police off the street and then it'd be like the purge. That's not what's happening. What we're asking is that you have all these police down on Mass and Cass, but I never see one of them move out of their car when there's shootings, when there's stabbings, when people are overdosing. They stay put, but they're there to police the area. It's a waste of taxpayers' money. So how do you plan to bridge the gap? It's not even a gap. That bridge was built up, it was blown up with nitro, and I don't know, the person sitting in these seats, they have a hell of a job to do. And I want to know if you're prepared to do that, especially with this relationship. Because like you said, relationship is important. It's a mutual respect. But if the community, especially a lot of people who are convicted felons who have records, if they feel like they have no respect from the Boston police, they're definitely not going to give any.
So yeah, I have to piggyback on the fact that it is a relationship, right? That we're trying to build or reconstruct.
Right.
And so I have some ideas.
Okay, great. We'd like to hear them. I would, especially. Woo.
Oh, great. I think that there are preventative measures that we can take. So looking at community policing in a different way means that police will take the time to actually build relationships with the community. Mm-hmm. So creating jobs out of police resources for youth is huge, especially if it's connected with their community policing. Looking at New Jersey with their community policing, community street team, and how they curve their violence there. I think 0 gunshots in 2000. People say, oh, that's COVID, but still we had gunshots here too. So during COVID. And so what they've done is it's an independent nonprofit program who's allied and collaborated with the police department, and they actually do the mediation. Now, people may say, well, that's already being done with VIP or other programs, but I think just looking at how New Jersey is doing it to see if we're missing any components and duplicating that, why not? If it's a best practice. The other thing too is that you know how we have DYS, and then we always address mental health workers or mentors or clinicians to address those issues or services with youth in DYS. I think if we partnered with the police department who wants to give back, and even if they're on a paid time, to mentor and actually build circle of healing process with youth in DYS system and begin to help them as father figures, as big brothers program type of thing in DYS, I think that's preventative. I also think that we need to look at economic integration as a preventative measure for youth violence and building relationships, So also looking at jobs. I mean, this is a wild idea, but maybe giving the detail jobs to civilians. The same way we have meter maids.
I think that is a great idea, because to be honest with you, the Boston police, when they do details, all they do is stand there. Anybody can do that, or they're on their phone. Anybody can do that. I mean, let's be transparent. They're not doing anything, and they're making a whole lot of money off of taxpayers. So if that's the case, give it to somebody who doesn't have a job. Maybe they can do these things. So you're right.
Yeah. So I think that so looking at those ideas, but also looking at what are they getting paid and what are their needs for doing so much overtime.
Right.
What's the problem if you get paid $60,000 in Boston? I'm not saying giving them a raise, but I'm saying looking at overall, making sure that people are comfortable. Because if you're saying you have to live in Boston, but $60,000 as a family man does not, or a family woman does not get you a home in Boston,
Does not.
then there's something wrong, and you're setting people up to go into overtime and detail so that they can make up the difference for their livelihood, right? So they can take care of their
Right.
family. So
Right.
looking at both ends and making sense out of that budget, making sense out of what they're getting paid,
Right.
as well as looking at just how, again, community policing, mentorship programs, creating, taking police resources and creating jobs for youth
Right.
are just at the top of my head. But I do have some other ideas on how to look into that.
Don't worry, you're doing a great job at answering.
Thank
And
you.
again, I said to you before we even started this interview, the best thing that you can be is transparent, because I think at this point, the Black and brown community is so fed up that they can see through the BS. So no one
Yeah.
wants, no, we're tired of it. And I think that in order for us to be really tired, we need to get out and vote. If you're so tired of it, go to the polls, vote. But it's important for us to know who you are. And people don't know who half the candidates are. I am bringing the debates here to Boston for the first time. And I think if presidents have debates, why can't the people who are in Boston City Council have debates? So I plan to have debates, and I think it'll be an
Local,
awesome.
absolutely. Absolutely. Sorry. Local government is super important. And if we can't invest in it the same way we do with, right, with other elections, then we're
Absolutely.
failing.
Absolutely.
I do want to add that I think that, at any point when you want to build a relationship with your counterpart, being police or Black and whites or whatever in the community,
Right.
you have to bring all parties to the table.
Absolutely.
And so I think so in those conversations, in building those relationships, it has to be inclusive. So I have reached out to Mamleo and other organizations, police organizations, and I do have scheduled meetings with them already, because again, this job is constituent based. It's about managing relationships. It's about building on best practices and resources that are already in place,
Right.
and maximizing on them.
So, Detective Lopes is the president over there. He's a young fella from Cape Verde himself, and I have had the pleasure of having some Zoom meetings with him. And he's a great guy with great ideas, but he took the seat that my uncle once filled for many years. Detective Larry Ellison filled that seat for many years. And again, even as he sat in that seat, he did go up against the department a lot, especially for the Black and brown community, and the way that we were treated and the lack of support that we got. I think that right now, because of the pandemic, it's even worse. It's like our eyes are open, but what are we really willing to do about it? How are you going to pour in to the community that you serve? Because I can guarantee you, if you take that seat, someone will complain about you, but they don't even know your name. They don't know who to call and say, oh, this is our district leader here. This is a person that we should call. But they will complain and they don't know you. So this is a reason why I said, let me bring these people on. Let me bring these candidates on so that people will never have an excuse to say they don't know you if you take this seat.
I really appreciate it. One of the things that I don't know if this is done before, but I wonder why we don't campaign after the campaign. So if we campaign once and we meet people, there are so many doors and so
Right.
many people and relationships. And I
Right.
think that the job is probably a busy one.
It
It's
is.
considered part-time, even though it's a full-time job.
Right.
And so dedicating, I think, entirely and investing in this job would mean that you take advantage of a base that you already
Right.
have,
Right.
and
Right.
you go back to the doors and you continue to build with people one-on-one, even if that means once a week throughout your time in office. It's a
Absolutely.
brilliant, in my opinion, it's a brilliant way to build relationships with community.
Right. And I agree with you. So what do you think about, because this is a big thorn in my side. What do you think
Oh,
about the quarries? What do you think about people coming out of prison, serving their time, and they still have an employer that will hold them accountable to the past that they're done with? They don't get a job. The system is so poorly designed that people say it's broken. I heard Sheriff Tompkins say this, and so we have some something to talk about. He said that he believes that it doesn't need to be torn down, but it just needs to be, he basically said, put a patch over a bullet hole. That's what he said, right? In so many words, he's saying, I believe the system can work for us. I believe that, we don't put enough into it to get enough out of it. I watched an interview, and I watch it over and over again, that he gave around the times where George Floyd and people were rioting and picketing and all those things were going on. And his whole department kneeled, right? And so he said that this was a movement. He told Channel 4, it's a movement. But when you're talking about the Black and brown community, and okay, no one should commit crimes. We all know that. So I think that a lot of times we have this misconception that if you are a minority sitting in the seat, that you're supposed to fix it. So my son gets arrested and I go to you and I expect you to fix this. No, change starts in your house. So you start in your house, you bring your kids up the way you want them to go, and they won't depart from it, right? That's scripture. I'm sure you know it. But more importantly, when we have to step outside and ask the Boston City Councilman to help us, how can we ensure that our needs are being met as far as the system is concerned? Because this quarry thing has been going on for a long time. And now they've made it even harder to even seal a record. Before it was 7 years for a felony, now it's 10 years. So how do we change that? And where do we start? Because this is not just a broken system. This needs to be torn down and built, not rebuilt the same way it was. It needs to go away and come back again in a way that it suits everyone's needs. Black, brown, all white, every race, and it doesn't.
I'm willing to collaborate or partner with state electeds to push those bills forward, right? Mm-hmm. I think going back to accountability, I think it's a two-way street. Mm-hmm. And I think that we have to campaign around informing folks about the issues. Absolutely. So that we can actually involve people in community meetings, or if they're filing ordinances, or if they're filing complaints, right. If they're holding police accountable, if they're holding, if we're lobbying, if we need to write letters, if we need to call, if we need to, any efforts, rallying, whatever it is, I think have to take it to the next step. I think where we get stuck is the emotional part where we rally, and then right. It's like, okay, when it gets to the lobby, how many of us actually know and of what's happening, right? Like, right. How many of us are notified, mm-hmm. and are we accessing people in a real way? And I think there are different ways that you can do that. We need to tap back into our churches and our community leaders. Absolutely. Because we have to go back to where people are trusted. So if we have a whole bunch of mental health providers or social workers, people that you trust, that you have relationships with, right? Your church leaders or faith-based, whatever, right. Where you have a good relationship with them, mm-hmm. We have to go into those agencies and spread out the information. Absolutely. Campaign, so that we're destigmatizing quarries, mm-hmm. as well as getting rid of it. Like, what if you've already served your time and it's supposed to be that you go in to rehabilitate, although the system is severely broken and it does not provide any rehabilitation, right. And hence recidivism, right? If we begin to actually look at these things as saying, look, we're saying that we are a merciful community or people, right. A city, then we need to act like it. If right. we want our youth to go out there and show mercy to each other, right. We need to be merciful. This connects to our zero tolerance policy in the schools. Oh right. My God. Like, that's really saying, like, you have no other chances. So, you're wrong, you get expelled, you're done. Right. How are we doing that? How are we rehabilitating our youth, right. When we give them no second chances? Same for Corey. Right. We're just a very punitive type of society or city, and we need to really take a hard look at that. In terms of actually getting the work done, I think that's how you do it. You, one, inform, two, you manage these relationships, or you network with these relationships with these agencies in the community. Right. You build right. with people that the community already trusts. Mm-hmm. You put out the information, and you organize in bringing them to the lobbying and to the conversation, so that I think with numbers, that's how you win.
Absolutely. I don't know if anybody's noticed this, and I think I might have said this to Domingos and Leon and Father Jacob when we were down on Massancasa on Mother's Day. We actually went to the jail and held signs for the women to say Happy Mother's Day to them. You'd be surprised at how many officers walk by that I've been in contact with, and they, um, again, I think sometimes they don't think that people can recover, especially if they've been incarcerated more than one time. But what I notice about South Bay, and as a matter of fact, I actually happened to be incarcerated when I noticed it. Across the street from the other side of the highway is the morgue. Right next to it is a, a shelter. Across the street is the hospital. If you go behind the jail, it is the methadone clinic, right? Do you notice how this is like one big circle? So people, it's like a dog chasing their tail, and the only way to catch it is if you sit down, right? So if people
Or if
haven't
you
looked
die.
exactly, and when you sit down, it's usually because you're injured and you maybe have overdosed and they brought you back to life this one time. But it is a revolving door for South Bay to see people leave out the front door and 48 hours they're back in the back door because they go to what they know, and it's one big circle. And sometimes when they go out the back door, they go right across the street to the morgue. So if you're looking at that, how do we plan to combat all of these things? And it's really designed for the Black and Brown community, and I have to be honest about that.
Of course. So I think, that's how systemic racism works, right?
Absolutely.
So three thoughts that come to mind. First, we got to talk about mental illness within the criminal justice system employees as well. So it's not just that, you have officers and then you have, citizens that suffer from mental illness,
Right.
constituents. No, we're all people and we are all the same,
Right.
literally.
Right.
And so we learn these lessons the same. Our journey shapes differently, or the colors are a little bit different, right?
Right.
But really, eventually we have to go learn the same lessons.
Absolutely.
And I think I'm a person who believes that everyone is redeemable. I'm a person who believes that no one is above reproach.
Absolutely.
And when you have a job that is so constrained by vicarious trauma,
Mm-hmm.
you're overworked, you're sleep deprived,
Mm-hmm.
you may or may not be self-medicating with alcohol or things that you don't necessarily have to detect.
Right.
People are suffering from these issues and they need counseling, therapy, they need treatment.
Right.
So I think within the police department as well, that conversation is probably already happening. I know they have rich services that they are offered. I'm not sure how effective. I have to do my research on that.
Right.
It would seem not very effective.
Right.
When we look at people, because they're wearing a uniform, it doesn't necessarily mean that they too are not suffering from a mental health issue, depression, circumstantial or not, temporary or not, but it doesn't mean that they too are not having anxiety and going through stuff.
Absolutely. Absolutely.
Right.
Right.
And so you have that. It's this cyclical thing that plays a part. Each thing plays a part in systemic racism, right? You have that, and they're like overburdened, and then you have the community with our pain and our suffering,
Right.
and then you have Black people, and then you have under that there's a category of Black women, and so we have so many things that we're constantly trying to survive on a daily basis.
Right.
And then you add on these types of systemic oppression.
Right.
And you add on a repressive city that doesn't afford Black people, especially Black women, enough opportunities. So
Right.
of course we're fighting for crumbs. Of course we're fighting each other. Of course we can't build together because we have to chase down like pennies.
Right.
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 And whenever there's an opportunity and you see two Black women going at it in the media, well, guess what? It's the system. It's not really their fault. And I mean that. I
Right.
mean that. Like,
Right.
it's like on a subconscious level, that's what we're doing to each other. And it's
Absolutely.
survival, it's self-preservation.
Right.
I get it. And we have to be very honest about it and say, when we see our sisters doing something or our brothers doing something, we have to be able to say, that's okay, sis. Like, I get it. You're having a hard time, and
Right.
cover her
Right.
faults, cover his fault, and
Right.
keep it pushing. We have
Right.
to overthrow this Anglo divide and conquer type of culture. We have to
Absolutely.
be able to really talk about these things openly. And
Right.
since we're talking about healing and, mass and caste and systemic racism,
Right.
we have to. There is no reconciliation without truth. None.
Absolutely. Absolutely.
And so these conversations, and it's part of healing, and we can do it with love.
Right.
When looking at your white counterpart, we have to create these circle of healing sort of process, truth reconciliation types of groups in our community with
Right.
gentrifiers
Right.
or people that are already here. And
Mhm.
we have to say, let's talk about how, from slavery to lynch to redlining to mass incarceration, let's talk about how talking about 300 years ago is
Right.
absolutely pertinent to this conversation today.
Absolutely.
It, and because that's the response, right?
Right.
What do I have to do with my ancestors 300 years ago?
Right.
Inevitably, you are affected.
Right.
Whether it's your guilt complex and you like to admit it or not,
Right.
you are human, aren't you? So innately, you are, and we are integrated.
Right.
What affects me affects you. And if you're not in pain, that's why maybe you have the superiority complex and you have to behave as though you're better than me.
Right.
And then, so like, it's not a thing of we can't fix it or we don't have the answers. It's a thing of, can we be ready to be honest, to be
Right.
genuine, and just allow each other with love to talk about these things,
Absolutely.
and tell our white counterparts, tell our gentrifiers, this is how this is affecting me, and this is where it is. Not to put the responsibility on the victim
Right.
necessarily, but in
Right.
a conversation, if need be, then we educate.
Right.
If need be, then we're compassionate. If need be, then we allow room for openness.
Right. Right.
I'll stop there.
You know,
Sorry.
I think this is a great conversation that a lot of people lack, and I think it's important. Again, we can push politics, and I told you behind the scenes that I'm not a politics person, right? I need transparency, and I need to know that the person that's going to take these seats is going to say, I'm not playing politics. I'm not here to be seen. I'm here to serve. And there's a big difference between the two. If you want to be seen, you're in the wrong space. If you want to serve, you're in the right space, right? And I noticed that you have been of service since you've come to America. And, I think that is an awesome thing to look at. I was telling my boyfriend this morning that I probably was going to cry during this interview. And I think I shared that with you too. I managed to hold it together because you keep smiling at me. It's very easy to just give it back to you, right? And those things are infectious and go a long way. And we need those things in the community. We need someone to look at us and smile and genuinely say, I love you, because that's like a loving smile. And we don't get that.
Thank you.
Everything is so harsh and thrown at us. It's like, just get them out of here. But the one thing that really stood out to me in your bio, and so I circled it, right? So
What?
I didn't bring my glasses, so you guys, I'll be 46 next Friday, so you got to excuse the
You
eyes.
look fantastic. Where, Black women,
Well preserved. I will say that. Amen to that. You founded something called Noah's Advocate. And in the Black and Brown community, we have a hard time speaking about mental health. Black men are very strong. They feel like they don't have any problems. They feel like I got it all together. I can do it all by myself. This is part of the reason why I decided to do a Father's Day event, because I feel like it is very important for Black men to be acknowledged, because women who are single mothers will celebrate Father's Day and they give in high fives. But what about the men who suffer in silence? Black men have a hard time expressing emotion and feelings. And for you to create this, and again, we come from a lot of trauma, right? So it's trauma-informed mental health services in the community. And so you founded this because of either you've gone through something, or you looked at the community and you saw that there was a need to bring this type of program to the community. So I want you to speak to everyone that's watching, everyone that will watch, about why you created Noah's Advocate.
So Noah's Advocate then became Noah's Advocate Productions, and we can segue into that.
Sure.
Noah's Advocate essentially was an agency that would contract through different clinical clinics, mental health clinics, to
Right.
provide these services. And through that, we provided services for folks with dual diagnosis, so addiction
Right.
and mental health,
Right.
homelessness,
Mhm.
as well as sex industry workers, to be able to provide counseling and testing for HIV/AIDS as well, and with youth. So it also provided mentorship,
Mhm.
but an umbrella, an array of services that covered youth, men and women,
Right.
in different stages of their life, but predominantly focus on trauma-informed wraparound services
Absolutely.
to sort of like, if you can imagine, like life coaching that was that had a mental health approach.
Right.
Um, and that's really what I did. Eventually, you know, with and here's the thing about mental health right now is that if we as families, parents, if we the people in the home, if we
Mhm.
don't understand our loved ones' mental health, if we don't work hard and this is on people that's running for office or people that are in office, we should run campaigns to destigmatize mental health completely.
Absolutely.
Um, and so, but if we don't understand it, then we don't know how to support, again, the treatment that our loved one is going through. And so Noah's Advocate also provided that level of service where
Right.
we were educating the support system. So
Right.
your friend, your cousin, your mom, your dad, whomever, if
Right.
you said my support system is in the church or is in the school, that's who we bring in
Right.
order for them to support you.
Right.
Um, and again, if we continue to connect folks or children to mental health, it's super important for us to make sure that the parents at home are equipped with the right information to understand exactly what diagnosis your child is being given, as well as the treatment that's going with it.
Absolutely.
Noah's Advocate eventually evolved to Noah's Advocate Productions because um, I, after so many years of human service,
Mhm.
I wanted to try out entrepreneurship and go
Right.
into the arts.
Right.
I've always had an affinity for arts, but it sort of did similar work. In theater, we just basically took mental health awareness and put it into performance arts.
Absolutely. Absolutely.
which is which I mean, people loved it. I mean, I think it was successful because we're the best attended show in the Strand Theater,
Right.
as well as we hear tears when I'm backstage, so that's a good thing, I think.
Yeah, it is. It absolutely is.
um, and it was really moving for all of us to be able to create platforms and opportunities for Black and Brown artists who otherwise would not get it anywhere else,
Right.
and just unconventional sort of approaches to doing this. But we had to be classy about it, because my beliefs are that Black folks, especially Black women, we deserve the best, right?
Absolutely. Absolutely.
The best.
Absolutely. Absolutely.
So the service was to the nines, and you would get 4-course everything, and you would
Wow.
come in and be served with white gloves. And I just was very intentional on making sure that it was amazing, an amazing experience for everyone,
Right.
so that everyone could walk away with feeling beautiful and feeling good. And
Right.
that's just the thing. We behave the way that we are treated, and we
Absolutely.
behave the way our environment looks or feels, right?
Absolutely. Absolutely. I agree with you wholeheartedly. So, if people were meeting you for the first time today and didn't know anything about you, didn't know anything about your background, I think that these interviews should be different in a sense that if we're pushing a campaign, then we're pushing politics. If we're pushing someone's beliefs, because see, their morals and their values go with them when they sit in that seat, right? So to me, if you're running off of your morals and your values, you would be the best person to sit in this seat, right? Someone who's going to support the community,
Thank
someone
you.
who's going to love on the community, right? With that being said, if I just met you for the first time today and all you could push was your campaign, how would you do that? and we're listening, because tomorrow we're going to go out and vote, and we're going to decide whether we're going to vote for you, if we're going to vote for Leon Rivera, if we're going to vote for the other candidates running for District 7. And this all depends on what you say right now. It's kind of like quick. Come with it.
Okay. So of course the hardest thing is a stump speech. I mean, that's it right there. So my name is Tania Anderson, and I am a Black Muslim woman who was raised in Roxbury. I've dedicated my entire life to my 29 years to human service, and I would love to be elected into office and work on youth violence, economic integration, COVID recovery for all that include mental health. Of course, address Maniacasin spread services throughout Massachusetts to more effective methods. Also work on senior recreational programs, be more inclusive, connecting every child to a caring adult in our community, creating economic integration for Black people, Black and Brown people,
right,
in our community, and specifically doing a more intentional tourist attraction with our arts in our community so we can benefit from the tourist market in downtown, as well as looking at how we can do subsidized housing in a different way, rent to own, invest in our community so that we can have generational wealth. If we create independent or financial independence, we then look at other ways to explore, like IRAs or life insurance, that we can create generational wealth for our families. I hope that you can give me an opportunity to come into office, ally with you, connect with you, be patient with one another, rehabilitate our youth, and really give Boston a second chance so that we can benefit from all of the wonderful institutions, all of the beautiful agencies, and the work that others have put before me. Thank you.
And you want to know something? I hope you use that the next time somebody tells you they only have 5 minutes, because I gave you 5 minutes and that's exactly what you took. And that was awesome, because that's what people want to hear. And you know what? You said it with so much conviction and compassion that people could only understand that it came from such a great place. You know, a lot of times people do see me in the community with Leon Rivera. I think that he is a good community activist. He's in the community. He's touching on things that some people don't want to touch on. So when I hear other people in his district with the passion that you have, I have to say, uh-oh, this is going to be a good race. And I can't wait to see you guys at the debates. And I can't wait to see you. You have to bring it. If you're going to come, at this point, I think that the Black and Brown community, and I want everyone to hear me, come with it. We need to come out in droves to vote. We need to come out so that people can understand that we're not playing, right? The setback was real. We've been set back for a long time. Now we're ready for the comeback. And we could only do it if we come out and vote, if we listen with intention to every candidate that's running for every district, and if we show up to see what they're really about. If Tania tells you she's in the community all the time, but you never see her in the community, what does that mean for you? Right. And those are the real issues at hand. You know, Tania, I thank you for joining me tonight. I can't wait to have you at the debates. So get ready, practice a lot, because I think that everyone is going to need it. But more importantly, you guys, look at Tania Anderson that's running for District 7. Remember the things that she said. And accountability is a big thing when someone is sitting in the seat. Hold her accountable. And just remember this. Everyone that sits in those seats, it's not that they don't want to do what they say they're going to do. Sometimes they're met with great opposition. And in saying that, just know that that person is going to assure you that they're going to do everything they can to do what they promised you that they would do. Tania, it was more than a pleasure to have you on the show with me tonight. I appreciate you. Much love to you. I love what you're doing in the community. And I'm going to tell you to keep going no matter what. I've asked every candidate that I have had a conversation with, if they don't take the seat, will they still be as strong in the community as they have been while they've been running this race? And I pray that you continue to be of service in the community no matter what. We need more Black women like you to kind of mother us, even people that are older than you. When we come from a place of not having a mother or a father, we're looking to someone who can kind of nurse us back to life, so to speak. You know what I mean?
Amen. Amen.
Right?
Thank you for your time. I pray that you are blessed and protected, and that God offers you your heart's desire.
Thank you so much.
And I just want to let people know they can email me at taniaforboston@gmail, or please view my website, pretty user friendly, Tania4D7. That's the numbers, Tania the number 4D7, the number 7.com.
Mm-hmm.
Please look me up, give me feedback. Let me know how you can be of support, if you want to volunteer, if you want to door knock, if you want to make phone calls. If you just want to be involved in any way, let me know. I would love to hear from you. Thank you so
Absolutely.
much, Tawana.
You're welcome. Everybody, thank you for joining Tawana B and Not Your Normal Conversation. Join me tomorrow at the same time. I'm going to have Gina Fletcher on, and she's definitely an experience. And by the way, she sings, but she comes from a place of hurt, and now she's healing, and she wants you to heal with her. But her dog sings too. So this ought to be very interesting. So join me tomorrow night, 7 p.m. Eastern Standard Time. I look forward to seeing you guys. Everybody have a blessed evening. And remember this face, right? She's running for District 7, just in case you forgot. Hold her accountable. She gave you all of her information. You can always look back at this video and see exactly who she is. She's on Facebook. She's very active. And get involved. Black and brown community, let's get involved. Let's make it happen for us. It's time for us to come up. You
Thank you,
guys have a
Tawana.
blessed evening. No worries. Tania, I am going to send you this interview so that you could have it for your portfolio. If there's anything that I can do to help your campaign, please call me, email me, send me phone numbers. I work from home. If you want me to call people, if you want me to go out and knock on people's door, I am not passive aggressive. I'm aggressive in a way that people don't even know I'm being aggressive, because I always look so nice. But I need to push the Black voters' hand, because I see, since I have been out in the community with Domingos and other people, that we are, yeah, this has been